Let's be honest about tomorrow morning. The alarm is going to ring. You are going to be tired, and your brain is going to beg you for 5 more minutes of comfort. If you listen to that voice, if you hit that button, you haven't just lost 10 minutes of sleep. You have signaled to your nervous system that your feelings are more important than your goals. Most people lose the war for their life before 7 a.m. But the reason isn't laziness. It's not a lack of willpower. It is a biological glitch in your operating system that we are going to fix right now. Let me paint a picture for you. Fast forward 1 year from today. You are standing in front of a mirror. There are only 2 versions of you that can be looking back. One version carries the weight of another wasted year, another cycle of good intentions that dissolved into quiet regret. The other version stands taller, sharper, calmer, with the unmistakable confidence of someone who actually followed through. The distance between those 2 people is not talent. It is not luck. It is not even discipline, at least not the way you have been taught to think about it. The distance between those 2 people is one single habit, and that habit is not what you think it is. But before I reveal what that habit is, I need you to understand why everything you have tried before has failed. Because if you skip this part, you will make the same mistake again. And I refuse to let that happen. Here is the cycle most people are trapped in. You feel a spark of motivation. Maybe you watch an inspiring video. Maybe someone you admire posts about their morning routine. Maybe a new year starts, and suddenly you believe this time will be different. So you set goals. You buy the journal. You download the app. You tell your friends and your coworkers. And for a week, maybe 2, maybe even a month, you are on fire. Then something happens. You sleep through the alarm. You skip the workout. You eat the thing you swore you would not eat. And instead of treating it as a single bad day, your brain does something brutal. It says, "See? I knew you could not do it." And just like that, the fire goes out. This is not a willpower problem. A landmark study from the University of Pennsylvania tracked over 2,000 adults trying to form new habits and found that willpower functions like a battery. It drains throughout the day. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every email you answer pulls energy from the same limited reserve. By 3 in the afternoon, most people are running on fumes. So when you rely on willpower to build your new life, you are building on a foundation that crumbles every single afternoon. And yet, this is exactly what 92% of people do. They white-knuckle their way through January and wonder why February feels impossible. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Let me show you the difference between how average performers and elite performers approach change. An average person wakes up and asks, "How do I feel today?" If the feeling is good, they go to the gym. If the feeling is bad, they hit snooze. Their entire life is a hostage negotiation with their mood. An elite performer wakes up and asks a completely different question. They ask, "Who did I decide to be?" That question does not care about feelings. It does not negotiate with comfort. It operates from a blueprint that was set in advance, and it produces consistent action regardless of the emotional weather. This is not a small distinction. This is the fault line that separates people who talk about change from people who actually change. And speaking of that alarm clock, let me tell you something that might sting. The first war you lose every single day happens in the first 5 seconds after your alarm goes off. That moment, that tiny window between the sound of the alarm and the decision to either stand up or hit snooze, is the most important decision of your entire day. Neuroscience research from the University of Nottingham shows that your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-control and long-term planning, requires immediate activation upon waking. When you hit snooze, you do not just delay your morning by 9 minutes. You send a signal to your brain that says comfort is more important than commitment. And that signal echoes through every decision you make for the rest of the day. The snooze button is not a convenience. It is the first lie you tell yourself each morning. And if you start the day with a lie, do not be surprised when the truth never shows up. Now I want you to consider something uncomfortable. Think about the last month of your life. Not the story you tell other people. Not the Instagram version. The real version. How many mornings did you wake up with intention and follow through? How many times did you choose what felt easy over what mattered? If a stranger looked at the evidence of your last 30 days, your bank statement, your screen time report, your fridge, your browser history, what would they conclude about your priorities? This is not a guilt exercise. This is a clarity exercise. Because the most dangerous lie in self-improvement is the lie we tell ourselves about who we already are. And the only way to break free is to look at the evidence without flinching. Here's what I know about you. The fact that you are listening to this right now tells me something important. You are not someone who has given up. You are someone who has been using the wrong system. There is an enormous difference between those two things. A person using the wrong system does not need more motivation. They do not need another inspirational quote. They need a different operating system. And that is exactly what this audiobook is going to give you. Over the next 9 chapters, you will learn a framework that is unlike anything in the standard self-help playbook. You will not get a list of 20 habits to try. You will get one habit that sits underneath all the others. One habit that, once installed, makes discipline feel automatic, makes good choices feel obvious, and makes your identity shift from someone who tries to change into someone who simply is changed. But here is the catch, and I need you to hear this clearly. The habit I am going to teach you is simple. It is not easy. Simple and easy are two very different things. Doing one push-up is simple. Doing it every single day for a year when nobody is watching and nobody cares requires something deeper than motivation. It requires identity. And identity is where we are headed next. In the next chapter, you will discover why 92% of people fail at change, and it has nothing to do with what you have been told. The 5 invisible forces working against you are more powerful than any amount of willpower, and until you see them, you cannot beat them. What you learn next will change how you think about yourself, your habits, and your future permanently. Let us continue. Chapter 2. Why 92% of people never change. 92%. That is not a guess. That is not a rough estimate. The University of Scranton published a study tracking New Year's resolution success rates across a 10-year period and found that only 8% of people actually achieve what they set out to do. 92% fail. And the most disturbing part is not the number itself. It is the fact that the 92% are not failing because they are weak, stupid, or lazy. They are failing because they are fighting an invisible war against 5 forces they cannot even see. And you cannot defeat an enemy you do not know exists. In this chapter, I am going to name those 5 enemies. I am going to strip away the illusion that change is simply about trying harder. And by the time we are done, you will understand exactly why your past attempts crumbled, and more importantly, why it was never your fault. It was your system. The first invisible chain is called the willpower myth. We talked about this briefly in the last chapter, but now I want you to understand just how deep this problem goes. Dr. Roy Baumeister at Florida State University conducted a now famous experiment. He placed 2 groups of people in a room filled with the smell of freshly baked cookies. One group was allowed to eat the cookies. The other group was told to resist the cookies and eat radishes instead. Afterward, both groups were given an impossible puzzle to solve. The cookie group worked on the puzzle for an average of 19 minutes. The radish group, the ones who had been burning willpower resisting those cookies, gave up after 8 minutes. Same puzzle, same room. The only difference was that one group had already spent their willpower reserves. This is called ego depletion, and it explains everything about why your evening self sabotages what your morning self promised. You wake up full of good intentions, but by the time you get home from work, you have made thousands of micro decisions, resisted dozens of small temptations, and your willpower tank is nearly empty. So you reach for the remote instead of the running shoes. You order takeout instead of cooking the meal you planned, and then you feel guilty, which drains you even further. The average person approaches change like this. They rely on willpower, and when it runs out, they blame themselves. The elite approach is fundamentally different. Elite performers do not trust willpower. Instead, they design systems that make good behavior automatic and bad behavior difficult. They do not fight the cookie every day. They remove the cookie from the room. That is a completely different strategy, and it changes the entire game. The second invisible chain is the identity lock. This one is subtle and dangerous. Deep inside your subconscious mind, you carry what psychologists call a self-concept. It is the story you tell yourself about who you are. I am a procrastinator. I am bad with money. I am not a morning person. I always start and never finish. These labels feel like facts, but they are not. They are narratives. And here's the problem. Your brain is engineered to maintain consistency with your self-concept. Cognitive psychologists at Stanford have documented this extensively. When your behavior starts to drift away from your identity, your subconscious pulls you back, like a thermostat correcting the room temperature. So you can white-knuckle your way through a new habit for a few weeks, but if your internal story has not changed, your brain will sabotage you to restore equilibrium. This is why people who lose weight gain it back. This is why people who quit smoking start again. The behavior changed, but the identity did not. And identity always wins. Think about it this way. If you believe you are not a morning person, you can force yourself to wake up at 5 for a while. But every morning your brain whispers, "This is not who you are." And eventually, you listen. The chains are not on your wrists. They are in your story. The third invisible chain is the environment trap. Dr. and Thorndike at Massachusetts General Hospital conducted a brilliant experiment. Without changing any menus, any prices, or any advertising, her team simply rearranged the hospital cafeteria. They moved water bottles to multiple locations and made them more visible. They placed healthier foods at eye level. The result was striking. Water sales increased by 25%. Soda sales dropped by 11%. Nobody was told to drink more water. Nobody was lectured about health. The environment was redesigned, and the behavior followed. Your environment is doing the same thing to you right now, but probably in the wrong direction. Your phone sits on your nightstand, so you check it the moment you wake up. Junk food sits at eye level in your pantry, so you grab it without thinking. Your desk faces a television, so you watch it while you should be working. You have not made a conscious decision to do any of these things. Your environment made the decision for you. Here is what separates the majority from the elite on this point. Most people try to change their behavior inside a toxic environment. They try to eat healthy while their kitchen is full of processed food. They try to focus while their phone buzzes every 30 seconds. They try to read while the television is on. This is like trying to swim upstream in a river of concrete. Elite performers flip the equation. They change the environment first, and then the behavior changes almost effortlessly. They do not rely on discipline to override their surroundings. They make the surroundings work for them. The fourth invisible chain is the dopamine hijack. And this is where modern life has created a trap that previous generations never faced. Dr. Wolfram Schultz at the University of Cambridge discovered something remarkable about dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical. It is not. Dopamine is the anticipation chemical. It fires not when you receive a reward, but when you expect one. This is why scrolling social media is so addictive. Every swipe carries the promise of something interesting, something funny, something validating. Your brain floods with dopamine not because of what you find, but because of what you might find. Now here is the devastating implication for habit change. Your brain has been hijacked by instant reward systems. Social media, streaming services, fast food delivery apps, and online shopping have trained your dopamine system to expect instant gratification. So when you try to build a habit that has a delayed reward, like exercising or saving money or learning a new skill, your brain revolts. It screams for the quick hit. And because the quick hit is always one tap away, your brain almost always wins. The fifth and final invisible chain is social gravity. Harvard Medical School researcher Dr. Nicholas Christakis analyzed data from the Framingham Heart Study, one of the longest-running health studies in history, and found something shocking. If your close friend becomes obese, your own risk of obesity increases by 171%. Not because they force you to eat, not because they discourage your exercise, but because their behavior unconsciously resets your sense of what is normal. You absorb the standards of the people closest to you. Their habits become your default. Their ceiling becomes your ceiling. So if the 5 people you spend the most time with are stuck, comfortable, and coasting, you are swimming in a current that pulls you toward the same destination. It does not matter how ambitious you are on the inside. Social gravity is relentless, and it works beneath your conscious awareness. Now pause for a moment. 5 chains: willpower depletion, identity lock, environmental design working against you, dopamine hijacking, social gravity. These are not excuses. They are explanations. And explanations are the first step to solutions. Because here is the truth that changes everything. Every single one of these chains has a counter strategy. Willpower depletion has a counter. It is called system design, and we will build yours. Identity lock has a counter. It is called identity first change, and you will learn it in the next chapter. The environment trap has a counter. It is called choice architecture. Dopamine hijacking has a counter. It is called dopamine scheduling. Social gravity has a counter. It is called intentional tribe building. But none of these counters activate until you do one thing first. One thing that sits underneath all 5 solutions. One habit that makes every other strategy possible. And in the next chapter, I am going to reveal exactly what that habit is. I promise you, it is not what you expect. It is simpler than you think, more powerful than you imagine. And it is the reason some people transform their entire lives in 90 days while others spend decades spinning in the same cycle. Stay with me. The next chapter changes everything. Chapter 3, the one habit nobody talks about. For decades, the self-improvement industry has been keeping something from you. Not deliberately, not maliciously, but through sheer repetition of the same incomplete advice. Every book, every video, every guru tells you what habits to build. Wake up early, exercise, journal, meditate, read. They hand you a list and say go. And you try, and you fail, and you assume the problem is you. But the real problem is that every single one of those experts skipped the first step. They told you what to do, but none of them told you the one thing you need before any of it works. And right now, in the next few minutes, you are going to learn what that one thing is. Let me take you back to someone I introduced in chapter 1. His name is David, and when I first encountered his story, he was 34 years old, sitting in his car in a parking lot, unable to walk into his own office. Not because of a physical injury, because something inside him had broken. He had the job. He had the apartment. He had, by every external measure, a decent life. But he felt paralyzed, stuck in a loop he could not name. David eventually went to see a therapist, and in their first session, the therapist asked him a question that would change his life. She did not ask about his childhood. She did not ask about his goals. She asked, David, over the past 7 days, how many times were you actually aware of what you were feeling in the moment you were feeling it? David thought about it, and then he said, almost never. That answer cracked everything open, because David was not lacking motivation. He was not lacking talent or intelligence or opportunity. He was lacking awareness. He was moving through his days on autopilot, reacting to triggers he could not see, making choices he never consciously made, and wondering why nothing ever changed. He was asleep at the wheel of his own life. And here is what the therapist told him next. And this is the core of everything you are going to learn in this audiobook. She said, you cannot change what you cannot see. And right now, you cannot see yourself. This is the habit nobody talks about. Not waking up early, not cold showers, not journaling. The one habit that changes everything is deliberate self-awareness. It is the practice of paying conscious attention to what you are doing, why you are doing it, and who you are being in real time as your life is happening. It sounds almost too simple, and that is exactly why it gets overlooked. Let me explain why this is not just another habit on the list, but the habit that makes every other habit possible. Think back to the 5 chains from the last chapter. Willpower depletion, identity lock, environment trap, dopamine hijack, social gravity. Every single one of those forces operates beneath your conscious awareness. That is what makes them so dangerous. Willpower drains silently. Your identity narrative runs in the background like invisible software. Your environment nudges you without permission. Dopamine pulls you toward the screen before you even realize you have picked up your phone. Social gravity shifts your standards slowly, imperceptibly, over months and years. Now ask yourself this. What is the one thing that could interrupt all 5 of those invisible forces at once? The answer is awareness. The moment you become conscious of an unconscious pattern, it loses its power over you. The moment you notice yourself reaching for your phone out of boredom rather than necessity, you have a choice. The moment you catch your inner narrative saying, "I am not the kind of person who sticks with things," you can challenge it. The moment you feel willpower draining at 3 in the afternoon and recognize it as depletion rather than weakness, you can deploy a strategy instead of collapsing into guilt. Deliberate self-awareness is not meditation, although meditation can strengthen it. It is not journaling, although journaling can support it. It is the underlying capacity that makes meditation, journaling, exercise, discipline, and every other positive habit actually stick. It is the operating system. Everything else is an application. Dr. Tasha Eurich at the University of Denver conducted a large-scale study across nearly 5,000 participants and found something that stopped researchers in their tracks. 95% of people believe they are self-aware, but the data showed that only 10 to 15% actually are. That gap between believing you know yourself and actually knowing yourself is where most of your self-sabotage lies. You think you know why you eat at midnight. You do not. You think you know why you procrastinate. You do not. You think you understand your patterns. But Dr. Urich's research proves that most of us are operating with a wildly inaccurate map of our own behavior. And here is the critical distinction. Most people, the average majority, go through their day reacting. Something happens, they respond automatically, and then hours later, if ever, they reflect on it. That is backward. Elite performers, the ones who seem to have superhuman discipline, have trained a different sequence. They notice in real time. They catch the impulse before it becomes action. They insert a gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap, they make a conscious choice. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, said it with precision that has never been improved upon. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. In our choice lies our growth and freedom. Deliberate self-awareness is the practice of expanding that space. Most people have no space at all. The alarm goes off, and they hit snooze before a single conscious thought forms. The craving hits, and the bag of chips is opened before they realize they were not hungry, they were stressed. The phone buzzes, and 30 minutes of scrolling evaporate before any decision was ever made. There was no gap. No awareness, just reaction. Now let me show you what this looks like in practice. David, the man from the parking lot, was given a simple protocol by his therapist. For the first 2 weeks, he was told to change nothing about his behavior. Nothing. He was only asked to notice. Notice when he reached for his phone. Notice what he was feeling when he opened the refrigerator at 10 at night. Notice the exact moment he decided to hit snooze. Notice the story his brain told him when a difficult task appeared. Just notice. Do not judge. Do not fix. Just see. What happened over those 14 days was remarkable. David started to recognize patterns he had never seen before. He discovered that his late-night eating had nothing to do with hunger. It was triggered by loneliness. He found that his procrastination spiked not when tasks were hard, but when tasks were ambiguous. He noticed that he hit snooze most often on mornings after he had spent the previous evening scrolling social media past midnight. For the first time in his adult life, David could see the invisible machinery of his own behavior. And once he could see it, something shifted. He did not need someone to tell him what to change. The awareness itself began generating change. He started going to bed earlier, not because a book told him to, but because he could finally see the cost of not doing so. He started exercising, not because of a New Year's resolution, but because he noticed, in real time, how much better his mornings felt when he moved his body. The habit of awareness created a cascade. One domino tipped, and the others followed. This is why deliberate self-awareness is not just a habit. It is the habit of all habits. It is the keystone. Charles Duhigg, in his research on habit formation, described keystone habits as habits that trigger chain reactions, changing other patterns as they move through your life. Duhigg identified exercise and family dinner routines as common keystones. But self-awareness sits above all of them. Because you cannot consistently exercise, eat well, save money, or maintain relationships without first being able to see yourself clearly. Awareness is not one domino. It is the finger that pushes the first domino. In the next chapter, I am going to take this further. Because awareness alone is powerful, but it is not complete. The real transformation happens when you combine awareness with a specific identity framework. When you learn to stop making decisions based on how you feel and start making them based on who you decided to be. That shift from mood-driven to identity-driven is the single most important upgrade you will ever make to your operating system. And once you understand it, you will never look at your life the same way again. Chapter 4. Stop being who you feel. Start being who you decided. Disciplined people do not have more willpower than you. Lazy people do not have less energy than high performers. And here's the part that will challenge everything you believe about yourself. The person you were yesterday has absolutely no authority over the person you choose to be today. None. Zero. The only reason yesterday keeps repeating is because you keep letting your feelings write the script. And feelings, as you are about to discover, are the worst possible author of your life. In the last chapter, you learned that deliberate self-awareness is the master habit, the one habit that unlocks every other habit. But awareness by itself is like a flashlight in a dark room. It shows you where you are. It does not tell you where to go. For that, you need something else. You need an identity decision. And making that decision, truly making it, changes the entire architecture of how you move through the world. Let me show you what I mean with a story that researchers at a major university health clinic have observed in hundreds of patients. Two people are offered a cigarette at a party. Person A says, "No thanks, I am trying to quit." Person B says, "No thanks, I do not smoke." On the surface, both said no. But underneath, something fundamentally different is happening. Person A still identifies as a smoker. They are a smoker who is trying to resist. Every cigarette they turn down is a battle against who they believe they are. And eventually, identity wins. They go back. Person B has made a different move. They are not resisting anything. They have simply updated who they are. Saying no is not an act of discipline for person B. It is an act of self-expression. It costs them nothing because it is consistent with the person they have already decided to be. This is the difference between behavior change and identity change. And this difference is the reason 92% of people fail. Most self-help programs operate on what I call the outside-in model. They start with outcomes. Lose 30 pounds. Make 6 figures. Run a marathon. Then they prescribe behaviors. Eat this. Do that. Wake up at this time. And they hope the identity will eventually catch up. It almost never does. Because you are asking someone who believes they are lazy to act like someone who is disciplined. You are asking someone who sees themselves as bad with money to behave like a financial planner. The identity and the behavior are at war, and identity has a nuclear arsenal while behavior has a slingshot. The model that actually works is the inside-out model. You start with identity. You decide, with full awareness and intention, who you are choosing to become. Then the behaviors naturally align, because they are expressions of that identity rather than violations of it. Here is how this works neurologically, and this is critical. Dr. Daphne Oyserman at the University of Southern California has spent over 2 decades studying what she calls identity-based motivation. Her research, published in the journal Psychological Review, demonstrates that when people connect a behavior to their identity, their persistence increases dramatically, their resistance to temptation drops, and they interpret obstacles as part of the path rather than reasons to quit. In one of her key experiments, students who were primed to think of themselves as the kind of person who perseveres were significantly more likely to complete difficult academic tasks than students who were simply told to try hard. Same task, same difficulty, different identity frame, massively different results. This is not positive thinking. This is not affirmation nonsense where you stand in front of a mirror and repeat words you do not believe. This is something far more grounded. It is the deliberate construction of an identity through evidence. Think of identity like a voting system. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. One day of reading does not make you a reader, but when you read every day for a month, the evidence starts to accumulate. Your brain looks at the data and begins to update the narrative. I read, therefore I am a reader. One workout does not make you an athlete, but 40 workouts in 60 days rewrites the story. You do not need a unanimous vote. You do not need perfection. You need a majority. And every single day, you are casting votes. Here is where most people go catastrophically wrong. They miss one day and treat it as a verdict. They skip a workout and say, "See, I knew I could not stick with it." That one missed day cancels, in their mind, every day they showed up. This is all or nothing thinking, and it is identity poison. Missing one workout does not make you inconsistent. It makes you human. What matters is the next vote. What matters is whether you show up tomorrow. Because one missed vote in an election does not determine the winner. The pattern determines the winner. Now let me connect this back to the awareness practice from Chapter 3. Here is where these two forces become unstoppable together. Awareness lets you see the moment of choice. Identity tells you which choice to make. Without awareness, you never see the moment. Without identity, you have nothing to guide the moment. Together, they form a complete operating system. Let me give you the practical framework. Every morning, before your feet hit the floor, ask one question. Not "what do I have to do today?" Not "how do I feel?" Ask this: who am I choosing to be today? That question activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning and self-regulation. It overrides the limbic system, which is screaming for comfort. And it sets an identity filter for every decision you will face over the next 16 hours. Then, throughout the day, when a decision point arrives, you run it through the identity filter. The alarm goes off. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like getting up?" you ask, "Would the person I am becoming hit snooze right now?" A coworker brings donuts to the office. Instead of asking, "Do I want one?" you ask, "Does the person I am building eat this?" The urge to scroll social media hits at 9 at night. Instead of asking, "What is the harm?" you ask, "Is this what the person I decided to be does with their last hour?" The average person makes decisions by polling their emotions. How do I feel right now? Am I tired? Am I stressed? Am I bored? And their behavior becomes a hostage to whatever emotional weather passes through. The elite performer makes decisions by consulting their identity. Not how they feel, who they are. Feelings are weather. Identity is climate. You do not cancel a flight because of clouds. You fly above them. Dr. Benjamin Hardy, an organizational psychologist whose research has been published through the American Psychological Association, makes a compelling argument that personality is not fixed. It is a choice. He draws on decades of longitudinal research showing that people's personalities change more over a decade than they predict they will. You are not stuck being who you were. You are always becoming. The question is whether that becoming is intentional or accidental. Let me tell you what happened to David when he combined awareness with identity. After his initial 2 weeks of simply noticing, his therapist asked him to write down a single sentence. "The person I am becoming does the following 3 things every day." David wrote, "The person I am becoming moves his body for 20 minutes, reads for 15 minutes, and goes to bed before 11. That was it. No massive overhaul. No 30-day challenge. Just 3 identity-consistent behaviors tied to a single sentence. Within 6 weeks, David had not only maintained those 3 habits, he had naturally added others. He started cooking instead of ordering delivery. He began having real conversations instead of texting. He asked for a transfer at work and got it. None of these changes were on his original list. They emerged organically because his identity had shifted and his behavior simply followed the new blueprint. That is the power of inside-out change. You do not chase 100 behaviors. You build one identity, and the behaviors come to you. But even with awareness and identity in place, there is a hidden threat that can destroy everything you have built. It is something you probably do every single day without realizing its cost. And in the next chapter, I am going to expose it. I call it the silence protocol, and what you learn will make you rethink every conversation you have had about your goals. Chapter 5: Shut Up and Build, the Silence Protocol. In 2009, a psychologist named Peter Gollwitzer at New York University published a study that should have rewritten every self-help book on the planet. It did not. Almost nobody talks about it. And the reason nobody talks about it is because the finding is deeply uncomfortable. It tells you to do the opposite of what feels natural. Here's what he found. When you tell someone your goal, your brain experiences a premature sense of completion. You get a hit of satisfaction, a small rush of dopamine, simply from announcing what you plan to do, even though you have not done a single thing yet. Your brain, in that moment, confuses talking about the goal with actually making progress on the goal. And once that false satisfaction hits, your motivation to do the real work drops significantly. Let that sink in. Every time you told a friend about your new diet, every time you posted your gym selfie on day one, every time you announced your business idea at a dinner party, you were not building momentum. You were bleeding it. You were handing away the very energy you needed to execute. And the applause you received, that is amazing and you are going to crush it. That applause was the most expensive dopamine hit of your life because it cost you your follow-through. This is not a theory. Gallwitzer tested it across 4 separate experiments. In one study, law students who told others about their intention to study harder actually studied less than those who kept their plans to themselves. The announcers performed worse, not because they were less capable, but because their brains had already cashed the emotional check. The reward had been collected. The work felt less urgent. Now I want you to think about how deeply this pattern runs in modern life. Social media has turned goal announcement into a performance art. People post their vision boards. They share their workout plans. They announce their morning routines on day one as if the announcement itself is the achievement. And the likes pour in. The comments flood. So proud of you. Keep going. And each one of those validations acts like a microdose of completion. The brain says, we are being recognized for this. We must be making progress. But the body has not moved. The work has not started. The only thing that has happened is noise. Here is the difference between how average performers and elite performers handle their goals. Average performers announce first, then struggle to execute. They share the vision, absorb the praise, and lose the fire. Elite performers execute first, then let the results speak. They understand something profound. Silence is not the absence of communication. Silence is the protection of execution energy. They treat their goals like a seed buried in dark soil. You do not dig up a seed every day to show people it is growing. You let it grow in the dark, and you reveal the flower. There is a second layer to this that most people never consider. When you announce a goal publicly, you create external accountability, which sounds like a good thing, but it comes with a hidden tax. You have now attached your ego to the outcome. If you fail, the failure is not just private, it is public. And the fear of public failure does not motivate most people. It paralyzes them. They start avoiding the work because the work now carries a risk that it did not carry before. Before the announcement, failure was just a lesson. After the announcement, failure is humiliation. So they procrastinate. They make excuses. They quietly abandon the goal and hope nobody asks about it. The announcement, designed to create accountability, instead created avoidance. Dr. Ibrahim Sinay and colleagues at the University of Illinois conducted a study that adds another dimension to this. They found that people who framed their goals as questions, will I exercise today, rather than declarations, I will exercise today, actually performed better. The question format triggers intrinsic motivation. It engages the brain's problem-solving mode. The declaration format triggers a closed loop. The brain treats the statement as a conclusion rather than an open problem to solve. So not only does announcing your goals steal your dopamine, but even the way you talk to yourself about your goals matters. Declarations feel powerful. They sound strong. But quietly asking yourself whether you will show up today activates a deeper, more sustainable form of motivation. The question stays open. It demands an answer. And the only way to answer it is with action. Now I want to return to David, because this chapter hit him the hardest. When David started his identity transformation, the first thing he wanted to do was tell everyone. He wanted to call his brother. He wanted to text his best friend. He wanted to post about it. And his therapist said something that changed the trajectory of his entire journey. She said, David, for the next 90 days, I want you to tell no one. Not your family, not your friends, not social media. You are going to build in silence. And when people start noticing the change without you saying a word, that is when you will know the change is real. David resisted. It felt unnatural. It felt lonely. But he followed the protocol. And something extraordinary happened. Without the external validation loop, David was forced to find his motivation internally. He could not rely on compliments to keep going. He could not use praise as fuel. The only feedback loop available to him was his own evidence. Did I wake up on time? Did I move my body? Did I read? The answers were either yes or no, and no amount of social media could inflate or deflate them. By week 4, David noticed something he had never experienced before: a quiet confidence. Not the loud, performative confidence that comes from announcing big plans. A deeper confidence that comes from knowing you did what you said you would do, even when nobody was watching. He described it as the difference between wearing a costume and growing a backbone. The costume gets compliments. The backbone holds you up. By week 8, people started noticing. His coworker asked if he had lost weight. His brother said he seemed different on the phone. A friend commented that David seemed calmer, more focused, more present. None of them knew about the protocol. None of them knew about the identity sentence. All they saw was the evidence. And that evidence, arriving unprompted and unannounced, was worth more to David than 1,000 likes. Here is the practical framework for implementing the silence protocol in your own life. First, choose one goal you are currently working on. Just one. Now, for the next 30 days, tell no one about it. If someone asks what you have been up to, keep it vague. Just working on a few things. That is enough. Do not explain. Do not elaborate. Do not seek validation. Second, redirect the energy you would have spent announcing, explaining, and defending your goal into actually doing the work. You will be stunned at how much time and mental energy you reclaim when you stop performing your ambition and start living it. Third, track your progress privately. A simple note on your phone, a mark on a calendar, something only you can see. Let the evidence accumulate in silence. Fourth, after 30 days, evaluate. Not by how others responded, but by what you actually did. Look at the data. Look at the record. The evidence never lies. There is one important exception to the silence protocol, and I want to be direct about it. If you are in a situation where you genuinely need support, where you are dealing with a health challenge, an addiction, or a crisis that requires professional help, silence is not the answer. The silence protocol applies to ambition goals, the kind where premature celebration kills execution. It does not apply to survival situations where isolation makes things worse. But for the goals you are chasing right now, the career changes, the fitness plans, the side projects, the morning routines, try something radical. Try shutting up. Try building in the dark. Try letting the work speak before you do. Because here is the truth that most people never learn. The world does not reward announcements. It rewards evidence. And in the next chapter, you are going to confront an even harder truth. You have been told your entire life to seek comfort, to reduce stress, to find balance. But the science says the opposite. Comfort is not your friend. Comfort is where your potential goes to rot. And what replaces it is something far more powerful than anything motivation could ever give you. Chapter 6. Comfort is where your dreams go to die. Your body is waging a war against your ambition right now, and it is winning. Every cell in your nervous system is engineered for one primary objective: keep you safe. Not happy, not successful, not fulfilled. Safe. And safe, in biological terms, means comfortable, unchanged, predictable. Your brain treats growth the same way it treats a physical threat. It floods you with resistance. It manufactures excuses. It generates anxiety, fatigue, and self-doubt, all designed to pull you back to the familiar. And if you listen to that biology, if you obey the comfort signal every time it fires, you will spend your entire life inside a shrinking cage. That is not a metaphor. Comfort zones actually shrink. Dr. Abigail Millings at the University of Bath published research showing that avoidance behavior is self-reinforcing. Every time you avoid something uncomfortable, the threshold for discomfort drops. What felt manageable last year now feels overwhelming. The speech you could have given 6 months ago now terrifies you. The conversation you should have had last week now seems impossible. You did not become weaker. Your comfort zone contracted around you, and now there is less room to move. This is the silent killer of potential. Not failure, not rejection, not even laziness. Comfort. Comfort disguised as self-care. Comfort disguised as waiting for the right moment. Comfort disguised as being realistic. And every day you stay inside it, the walls move a little closer. But there is a completely different way to think about discomfort, and it comes from a concept that will reshape how you approach every challenge in your life. The concept is called anti-fragility, and it was defined by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, a professor of risk engineering at New York University. Taleb argued that most people understand two categories. There are things that are fragile, meaning they break under pressure, and there are things that are resilient, meaning they survive pressure. But there is a third category that almost nobody considers: anti-fragile. Things that actually get stronger under pressure, not just survive, improve. Your muscles are anti-fragile. You tear the fibers in the gym and they grow back thicker. Your immune system is anti-fragile. Exposure to small doses of pathogens builds defenses that protect you from larger threats. Your bones are anti-fragile. Controlled stress increases bone density. This principle is called hormesis in biology, and it has been documented extensively by researchers at institutions like Johns Hopkins University and the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. Small doses of stress, applied consistently, create adaptation and growth. Remove the stress entirely, and the system weakens. Now here is the part that changes everything. Your psychology works the same way. Your confidence is anti-fragile. It does not come from affirmations or positive thinking. It comes from surviving things you were not sure you could survive. Every uncomfortable conversation you have builds communication resilience. Every rejection you absorb builds emotional armor. Every morning you get up when you do not want to builds proof that your identity is stronger than your mood. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the evidence that you have acted despite fear repeatedly until your brain stopped treating the action as a threat. The average person designs their entire life around comfort avoidance. They stay in the job they dislike because the interview process is uncomfortable. They stay in the relationship that has gone cold because the conversation about leaving is uncomfortable. They keep the same routine because changing it introduces uncertainty, which is uncomfortable. Every major decision is filtered through one question: will this cause me discomfort? And the answer determines their path. This is how people end up 45 years old, financially stable but spiritually bankrupt, wondering where their fire went. It did not go anywhere. They smothered it, one comfortable decision at a time. Elite performers have a fundamentally different relationship with discomfort. They do not avoid it. They schedule it. They build it into the architecture of their week like any other appointment. The cold shower at 6 in the morning is not punishment. It is training. The difficult conversation with a colleague is not a crisis. It is a rep. The early wake-up when the body screams for more sleep is not torture. It is a vote for the person they are becoming. They understand that comfort is a depreciating asset. The more you consume, the less it satisfies, and the weaker you become. Let me give you the science behind this. Dr. Andrew Huberman at the Stanford University School of Medicine has extensively discussed the role of deliberate cold exposure and other controlled stressors in building what neuroscientists call stress inoculation. The principle is simple. When you deliberately expose yourself to manageable stress, your nervous system adapts. Your baseline for what feels threatening rises. Things that would have sent you into a spiral 3 months ago now register as minor inconveniences. You have not eliminated stress from your life. You have upgraded your capacity to process it. This is the pressure forge, and it is the fifth pillar of the framework you are building. The idea is not to seek suffering for its own sake. That is masochism, not growth. The idea is to systematically expose yourself to challenges that sit just beyond your current comfort threshold. Not so far that they break you, just far enough that they force adaptation. Think of it as a temperature dial. Your comfort zone is 72 degrees. That is where everything feels easy and nothing grows. The pressure forge asks you to turn the dial to 78, then 80, then 83, gradually, intentionally. Each degree of discomfort triggers a micro-adaptation that makes the next degree more tolerable. Over weeks and months, your tolerance for difficulty expands dramatically, and what used to stop you barely registers. David experienced this directly. In the early weeks of his transformation, the simple act of waking up at 6 felt like running a marathon. His body resisted. His mind invented reasons to stay in bed. But he had his identity sentence. The person I am becoming gets up at 6. So he got up, and it was miserable for about 2 weeks. Then something shifted. The alarm at 6 stopped feeling like an assault. It became neutral. Then, by week 6, it became automatic. His nervous system had adapted. The thing that once required enormous effort now required almost none. So he raised the bar. He added a 20-minute walk before breakfast. Uncomfortable again. Adaptation again. Then he added the cold shower. More resistance. More adaptation. Each new layer of discomfort expanded his capacity, and each expansion made the previous challenges feel effortless. By month 3, David was doing things daily that would have seemed impossible at the start. Not because he had developed superhuman willpower, because his comfort zone had expanded through systematic pressure. He had forged himself in exactly the way a blade is forged. Heat, pressure, repeated strikes. And what came out the other end was sharper, harder, and more capable than what went in. Here is the practical application. Choose one discomfort to add to your daily routine this week. Just one. It could be a cold shower. It could be waking up 30 minutes earlier. It could be having a conversation you have been avoiding. It could be sitting in silence for 10 minutes without your phone. The specific action matters less than the principle behind it. You are training your nervous system to associate discomfort with growth rather than threat. You are teaching your brain that pressure is not the enemy. Stagnation is. And here is the critical connection to everything you have learned so far. Awareness lets you see the moment of choice. Identity tells you which choice to make. Silence protects your execution energy. And the pressure forge builds the capacity to execute consistently, even when it is hard. These 4 pillars do not stand alone. They reinforce each other. The more you practice discomfort, the stronger your identity becomes. The stronger your identity, the easier it is to stay silent while you build. The more you build in silence, the more evidence you accumulate. And the more evidence you accumulate, the more aware you become of who you truly are. But there is one more force multiplier that most people underestimate. It is the smallest habit on the list, and it has the largest compounding effect. In the next chapter, you will discover why one push-up matters more than a perfect workout, why one page matters more than an entire book, and why 1% improvement, applied daily, creates results that will stagger you. Chapter 7. The Mathematics of Mastery, the 1% Rule. You are addicted to the spectacular. We all are. It is hardwired into our modern culture. We love the montage. We love the movie scene where the hero decides to change, aggressive music starts playing, and in 2 minutes of screen time, they transform from a loser into a legend. We see the result. We see the 6-pack abs, the 7-figure bank account, the happy marriage, the completed novel. And because we only see the result, we assume the process must have been equally spectacular. So, you try to recreate the montage. You decide to get in shape, so you commit to working out for 90 minutes every single day. You decide to write a book, so you commit to writing 2,000 words every morning at 4 a.m. You decide to fix your finances, so you cut every single expense and live on rice and beans. And for 3 days, you feel like a god. You are running on pure adrenaline and the novelty of a new identity. But then comes day 4. You are sore. You are tired. Your boss yells at you. The car breaks down. The adrenaline fades, and the reality of the mountain you have built crashes down on you. You miss 1 day, then 2. And because you cannot sustain the spectacular, you quit entirely. This is the trap of go big or go home. And let me tell you the truth about that phrase. It is the most destructive advice ever given to ambitious people. If you go big, you will almost certainly go home. The elite performers we discussed in previous chapters, the ones who seem to operate on a different level of existence, do not go big. They go small. Painfully, boringly, consistently small. They understand a mathematical truth that the average person ignores. They understand the law of compounding. Let me give you the math, and I want you to visualize this clearly. If you get 1% better at something every single day for 1 year, you do not end up 3 times better. you do not end up 10 times better. Mathematically, 1.01 to the power of 365 is 37.78. You end up 37 times better. But here is the dark side of that equation. If you get 1% worse every day, if you let your standards slip just a tiny fraction, if you choose the easy path, if you skip the small things, 0.99 to the power of 365 brings you down to 0.03. You effectively disappear. The distance between those two numbers, 37.78 and 0.03, is the gap between the life you have and the life you want. And that gap is not created by massive leaps. It is created by microscopic decisions that seem insignificant in the moment. This is why you fail. You are looking for a revolution when you should be looking for an evolution. In 2003, British cycling was the laughingstock of the professional world. In 100 years of Olympic competition, they had won just a single gold medal. Their reputation was so bad that a top bike manufacturer allegedly refused to sell them equipment because they didn't want their brand associated with such failure. Then they hired a man named Dave Brailsford. Brailsford did not say, "We are going to train 5 times harder." He did not say, "We are going to fire everyone and start over." He implemented a strategy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. He looked for a 1% improvement in everything. They redesigned the bike seats to make them slightly more comfortable. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for slightly better grip. They tested different massage gels to see which led to slightly faster muscle recovery. They even hired a surgeon to teach the riders the best way to wash their hands to reduce the chances of catching a cold. Trivial things. Things that nobody else bothered to look at because they weren't spectacular. But 5 years later, at the Beijing Olympics, the British cycling team won 60% of all the gold medals available. 4 years later in London, they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. They dominated the world not by doing one thing 100% better, but by doing 100 things 1% better. You are ignoring the 1% because it feels too small to matter. You skip the push-up because what is one push-up going to do? You skip reading one page because how will one page change my life? You are right. In the moment, it does nothing. But over time, it does everything. The problem is that your brain is designed to undervalue delayed returns. This is what behavioral economists call hyperbolic discounting. We prefer a small reward today over a huge reward tomorrow. The average person demands immediate feedback. If they run for a week and don't see their abs, they think the running isn't working. If they save money for a month and aren't rich, they think the saving isn't working. They are stuck in the valley of disappointment. This is the period where your efforts have not yet compounded enough to be visible. It is where 92% of people quit. Elite performers live in that valley. They build their house there. They know that when the results finally show up, they will not arrive linearly. They will arrive exponentially. So, how do you apply the 1% rule to your life right now? You have to stop negotiating with your ambition and start negotiating with your biology. Your brain has an alarm system called the amygdala. It scans for threats. When you set a massive, terrifying goal, "I will run a marathon," your amygdala lights up. It perceives the change as a threat to your safety and comfort. It triggers resistance, fear, and procrastination. But when you set a goal that is laughably small, "I will put on my running shoes," the amygdala sleeps. It does not see a threat. It lets you proceed. This is the secret. You must shrink your habits until they are too small to fail. Stanford researcher Dr. B.J. Fogg calls this tiny habits. I call it the zero resistance protocol. If you want to read more, do not commit to reading a chapter a day. Commit to reading one sentence. If you want to get in shape, do not commit to an hour at the gym. Commit to doing one push-up. If you want to write, commit to opening your laptop. I can hear you arguing with me. But one sentence won't make me smart. One push-up won't make me strong. You are missing the point. The goal is not the sentence. The goal is not the push-up. The goal is the identity. Remember chapter 4? We talked about casting votes for the person you want to become. When you do one push-up, you cast a vote for, "I am an athlete." When you read one sentence, you cast a vote for, "I am a reader." You are establishing the routine. You are showing up. You are proving to yourself that you are reliable. A workout that doesn't happen because it was too hard is worth 0. A workout that consists of 5 minutes of stretching is worth infinitely more because it keeps the chain alive. It reinforces the neural pathway that says, I am the kind of person who trains every day. Consistency is the prerequisite for intensity. You cannot optimize a habit that does not exist. Most people try to optimize before they establish. They worry about the perfect workout plan before they have walked into the gym for 10 days in a row. They worry about the perfect business strategy before they have made a single sales call. Shut up and do the 1%. Master the art of showing up. Once you are the person who shows up every day, then you can worry about increasing the intensity. Then you can add weight. Then you can write more pages. But until then, your only job is to not stop. The 1% rule also applies to how you view your progress. You need to stop measuring the gap between where you are and where you want to be. That gap is depressing. It is vast. It breeds anxiety. Instead, measure the gap between where you are and where you were yesterday. Did you do your 1% today? Yes. Then you won. This shifts your dopamine system. Instead of getting a dopamine hit only when you reach the distant goal, which might be years away, you get a dopamine hit every single day you execute your micro habit. You turn the journey into the reward. Now, I want you to look at your to-do list for tomorrow. It is probably filled with ambitious, heavy tasks. I want you to apply the 1% razor to it. Take your biggest goal and break it down until it sounds ridiculous. Do not write report. Write type opening sentence. Do not write clean house. Write put away 3 items. Make the barrier to entry so low that you would feel stupid for not doing it. Because here is the truth. The hardest part of any workout is putting on your shoes. The hardest part of writing is opening the document. The hardest part of the cold shower is turning the handle. The friction is in the start. The 1% rule removes the friction. Once you start, momentum takes over. Newton's first law applies to human behavior. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. You will find that once you do that 1 push-up, you will probably do 5. Once you read that 1 sentence, you will probably read the page. But you never have to. That is the contract. You are only required to do the minimum. Anything else is extra credit. This removes the guilt. This removes the pressure. And when you remove the pressure, you remove the resistance. You are building an anti-fragile system. A system that doesn't rely on you feeling motivated or high energy. A system that works even on your worst days. Especially on your worst days. Because anyone can work hard when they feel good. Anyone can crush a workout when the sun is shining and they had 8 hours of sleep. But what do you do when it's raining, you're exhausted, and you feel like a failure? The average person takes a day off. They wait for the feeling to return. The elite performer does the 1%. They do the single push-up. They keep the vote count moving in the right direction. They protect the asset. But even with the 1% rule, even with identity, even with awareness, there is a statistical certainty you need to prepare for. Chaos. Life will not always cooperate with your plan. You will get sick. You will have emergencies. You will have days where the world seems determined to break your streak. And eventually, despite your best efforts, you will miss. You will fail. The average person views this miss as the end. They think, well, I blew it. I might as well wait until next Monday to start again. And that pause turns into a week, then a month, then a year. The elite performer has a different response. They have a pre-installed safety mechanism for exactly this moment. A rule that prevents a stumble from becoming a fall. It is called the emergency protocol, and it is the only thing standing between a bad day and a failed life. In the next chapter, I am going to teach you how to never fail twice. Chapter 8, The Unbreakable Protocol. How to win the war forever. We have arrived at the precipice. You have the awareness. You have the identity. You have the silence. You have the 1% rule. You have the tools to start. But starting is easy. Starting is sexy. Starting is fueled by dopamine and the romance of a new beginning. The reason you are listening to this audiobook is not because you don't know how to start. It is because you don't know how to last. You are terrified of the day the music stops. You are terrified of the day you wake up and the motivation is gone, the weather is cold, Your boss is screaming, and your old life is clawing at your ankles, begging you to come back. And I am going to tell you something that might scare you. That day is coming. In fact, it is guaranteed. No matter how disciplined you become, no matter how perfectly you design your identity, chaos is coming for you. Entropy is the fundamental law of the universe. Things fall apart. Plans fail. Willpower breaks. The average person thinks that success means never falling off the wagon. They believe that if they miss a workout, or eat a pizza, or doom scroll for 3 hours, they have failed. They see the streak as a glass vase. One crack, and the whole thing is ruined. So they sweep the shards into the trash and give up. This is the fragility of perfectionism. The elite performer knows that the streak is not a glass vase. It is a muscle, and muscles tear before they grow. So, in this final chapter, we are going to build your ultimate defense system. We are going to combine the 3 final elements of the framework into a single, unbreakable protocol. We are going to talk about how to recover when you fail, how to design a life that makes failure nearly impossible, and finally, how to play a game that never ends. Welcome to the architecture of the inevitable. Part 1, the emergency protocol. Let's talk about the what the hell effect. This is a real psychological phenomenon identified by researchers Janet Polivy and C. Peter Herman. They studied dieters. They found that when a dieters indulged in a small, forbidden treat, say, a single slice of pizza, they didn't just stop there. They reasoned, well, I've already blown my diet for the day, so what the hell? And they would eat the entire pizza, then the ice cream. Then they would skip the gym the next day because the week was already ruined. A minor slip-up triggers a total collapse. This happens because you are judging your performance on a binary scale. You are either good or bad. You are either on track or off track. This is amateur thinking. The elite performer operates with an emergency protocol. The emergency protocol is a pre-written set of rules for when, not if, things go wrong. It is based on a single, non-negotiable law. Never miss twice. If you miss your morning workout because you overslept, that is a mistake. It happens. You are human. If you miss it 2 days in a row, that is not a mistake. That is the beginning of a new habit. You must stop the bleeding immediately. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, discusses this extensively, but I want to take it deeper. The moment you miss a rep, your brain begins to rationalize the next miss. I'm tired, it whispers. I deserve a break. The emergency protocol overrides that whisper. Here is how you build it. You need a floor routine. On your best days, your ceiling routine might be an hour of gym, 30 minutes of meditation, and deep work. But on your worst days, when you are sick, stressed, or traveling, you do not aim for the ceiling. You aim for the floor. Your floor routine is the absolute minimum viable action that keeps the identity alive. Maybe it is 5 minutes of stretching. Maybe it is reading 1 page. Maybe it is drinking 1 glass of water. The content does not matter. The continuity matters. When you execute your floor routine on a bad day, you are doing something psychologically profound. You are proving to yourself that you are disciplined even when conditions are terrible. Doing a workout when you feel great is easy. Doing 5 push-ups when you have the flu and your life is falling apart is heroic. That is where the callus is formed. That is where the identity solidifies. So write this down. When chaos strikes, I do not quit. I scale down. You do not abandon the ship. You simply shorten the sail. You keep moving, even if it is only an inch. Because an inch is infinitely better than a 0. Part 2. Designing the comfort zone. Now, let's look at why you fell off the wagon in the first place. In Chapter 2, we talked about the environment trap. But now, we are going to go further. We are going to talk about cockpit design. Imagine a pilot flying a fighter jet. Their cockpit is not cluttered with distraction. There are no candy wrappers. There are no unnecessary lights. Every single switch, dial, and lever is positioned for maximum efficiency and survival. Now look at your life. Look at your cockpit. Your phone is a slot machine designed by the smartest engineers in Silicon Valley to steal your attention. Your pantry is stocked with food engineered to bypass your satiety signals. Your friends, the people you spend the most time with, are likely reinforcing your old habits, not your new ones. You are trying to fly a fighter jet while sitting in a circus, and you wonder why you crash. You cannot rely on willpower. Willpower is a battery, and it drains. You need to rely on architecture. This brings us to the principle of via negativa, improvement by subtraction. Most people try to add good habits. They add meditation. They add running. But they do not subtract the friction. To build an unbreakable life, you must be ruthless about elimination. First, digital elimination. The average person touches their phone 2,617 times a day. That is not a statistic. That is a tragedy. Every notification is a micro-interrupt that destroys your flow state. The protocol demands that you turn off all non-human notifications. If it is not a text from a real person or a call, you do not need to see it. Delete the apps that make you feel like garbage. You know which ones they are. The ones you scroll through for 40 minutes and then surface feeling empty and anxious. They are not tools, they are parasites. Remove them. Second, physical elimination. If you want to stop eating sugar, do not try to resist it. Throw it out. If you want to practice guitar, do not keep it in the case in the closet. Put it on a stand in the middle of the living room. Stanford psychologist B.J. Fogg calls this designing for laziness. Make the good behaviors the path of least resistance. Make the bad behaviors the path of impossible resistance. If you have to unplug the TV and put the remote in another room to stop watching Netflix, do it. You will feel ridiculous for the first week. Then you will feel free. Third, and most dangerous, social elimination. We discussed social gravity earlier, but here is the hard truth I saved for the end. You cannot change your life if you are dragging dead weight. There are people in your life who prefer the old you. The old you is predictable. The old you made them feel comfortable about their own lack of progress. When you start changing, when you start saying no to the drinks, no to the gossip, no to the wasted weekends, they will react. They will say, "You've changed." They will say it like an accusation. Your response, internally, should be, "Thank you." You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. This does not mean you have to divorce your family or fire your oldest friends, but you must curate your exposure. Spend less time with the energy vampires. Spend more time with the expanders. Mirror neurons are real. You are biologically programmed to mimic the people around you. If you hang out with runners, you will eventually run. If you hang out with complainers, you will eventually complain. Design your cockpit so that success is the default option, not the difficult one. Part 3, the infinite game. And now, we reach the final question. The question that keeps high achievers awake at night. When does it end? When do you get to stop? When do you get to relax? When do you get to say, "I made it"? The answer is never. And if that sounds exhausting, it is because you are playing the wrong game. James Carse written a brilliant book called Finite and Infinite Games. A finite game has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The goal is to win. Football is a finite game. An election is a finite game. An infinite game has no end. The goal is not to win. The goal is to keep playing. Health is an infinite game. You do not win fitness. You cannot do 1,000 push-ups and then say, "Okay, I am fit forever." The moment you stop, the entropy begins. Relationships are an infinite game. You do not win marriage. It is a continuous negotiation of love and respect. Self-mastery is an infinite game. The misery of the modern world comes from treating infinite games like finite ones. You think, once I lose 20 pounds, I will be happy. Once I make $1 million, I will feel secure. Once I get that promotion, I will be successful. This is the arrival fallacy. You reach the summit, you get the dopamine hit, and 3 days later, you feel empty again. You look around and ask, "Is this it?" Yes, that is it. Because the trophy is dust. The medal is just metal. The bank account is just pixels on a screen. The elite performer understands that the prize is not the outcome. The prize is the person you become in the pursuit of the outcome. Let me tell you about the concept of dopamine error one last time. Dr. Andrew Huberman explains that if you only get dopamine from the finish line, you will be miserable for the entire race. And since the race is 99% of your life, You will be miserable for 99% of your life. You must learn to attach dopamine to the effort itself. You must learn to love the friction. You must learn to look at the cold morning, the difficult book, the hard conversation, and say, "This is it. This is the game." The moment you shift your focus from "where am I going" to "who am I being," everything changes. You stop rushing. You stop looking for shortcuts. Shortcuts are for people who want to get out of the game. You want to stay in the game. The Japanese have a word for this, shokunin. It refers to a craftsman who dedicates his entire life to the perfection of a single skill, not for money, not for fame, but for the honor of the craft itself. A sushi chef who spends 50 years learning how to cook rice perfectly is playing the infinite game. He is not trying to finish cooking rice. He is trying to understand it. That is what your life is. It is a craft. You are the sculptor, and you are the marble. Every day, you chip away a little more of the excess. You remove the fear. You remove the laziness. You remove the ego, not so you can finish the statue, but so you can see what is hiding inside. The final verdict. We have covered a lot of ground. We talked about the war you lose every morning. We talked about the 92% who fail because they rely on willpower. We talked about awareness, identity, silence, the 1% rule, and the emergency protocol. But information is not transformation. You can memorize this entire audiobook. You can quote the studies. You can explain the neuroscience to your friends. And you can still be the exact same person next year that you are today. Knowing the path is not the same as walking the path. Right now, the audiobook is ending. The silence is about to return. And in that silence, you will face a choice. It is the same choice you faced this morning. It is the same choice you will face tomorrow. The comfortable path is waiting for you. It is warm. It is easy. It demands nothing from you. It will let you sleep in. It will let you scroll. It will let you blame your parents, your boss, and the economy for your life. It will whisper that you are good enough just the way you are. But deep down, you know the truth. You know that comfort is a slow death. You know that you were built for something harder, something higher. You have a version of yourself that is waiting to be born, a version that keeps promises, a version that commands respect, not by demanding it, but by earning it, a version that looks in the mirror and likes who they see. That version is not going to be given to you. You have to build it, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. It will be hard. It will be lonely. There will be days when you want to quit. But remember the one habit that changes everything. Decide. Decide who you are. And then, do not let a single feeling, a single excuse, or a single person talk you out of it. The world is filled with people who are waiting for permission to be great. They are waiting to be discovered. They are waiting to be saved. No one is coming to save you. No one is coming to give you permission. You have to save yourself. You have to authorize yourself. The war is not out there. The war is in here. And for the first time in your life, you have the weapons to win it. The alarm is going to go off tomorrow morning. The cold floor is going to be waiting. The choice is going to be yours. Hit snooze and stay asleep. Or get up and wake up. The game is on. It's your move.